Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jalen and today I am sharing some underrated books that I loved in 2020 that were released this year, and I think that you all might love them too. So I have 6 books here. I've talked about 4 of them in previous videos. One of them I've talked about a lot, so bear with me if you have seen those videos. I'm just gonna rave about them even more. But I have 2 other books that I've never talked about that I really like, and one that I recently just read this week, and then one I read back in March. So yeah, let's get into it. But before we do, I'll share what I'm drinking today. Oh man. Fitting with winter, I have an almanac beer, this pretty glittery art. It's called Bunny Hill IPA. It is a hazy IPA, dry hopped with cashmere and Simcoe hops. And I just tried it. It's very good. As expected from Almanac, they're really great. If you ever see their beer, it's always gonna be good. I don't know where they're based out of. Alameda, California. But yeah, this one's actually really good. I'm really enjoying it. It is 6.1%, so not too heavy of an IPA, not too light either for some fun times. Okay, I will preface this video and the sharing of these books by kind of talking about how I decided what's underrated. And so for me, my scientific way of determining what's underrated here is just, I went through my Goodreads and clicked on books that I really liked that I hadn't seen often. And these ones had like some of the lowest review counts that I've seen. And I haven't seen them much on Bookstagram or on BookTube. And so that was basically the science of it. And oddly enough, this stack ended up being quite white and male, which is not something I usually read. In this year, I haven't read many books by white male authors. I read mostly women. I will say these ones are worth your time. Funny enough, my friend CJ, she always says, we've had enough books by white male authors, which is absolutely true. But I did like these and I thought I would share them here. So to start, I will share a book that I've talked about a lot recently that I really, really loved and I want to see it in more people's hands. That is At Night, All Blood is Black by David Diop, translated by Anna Moschovakis, I'll put it here. This one is translated from the French and is about a man who is fighting in World War I. He's Senegalese and black, and it follows him after he witnesses his very close friend in war get severely injured, and he begs his friend, the friend begs him to kill him, and the narrator does not end up killing his friend, and his friend suffers for about 2 or 3 days. And the book shows his reckoning with that decision and the guilt he feels. And basically this book is just a serious indictment of war and the impacts that it has on everyone, but also, black men, and kind of like the untold stories of black men fighting in this war, and just seeing the way trauma and grief and war all combined, kind of, picking away at someone's mind. In this book, it's pretty gruesome. He starts seeking revenge against the German soldiers on the other side. By every night he picks off one of them and he brings home a severed hand to his side, and his comrades are all applauding him for doing that. And eventually they start to get a little bit wary of him. They're like, why is he still bringing back hands? Like, he's crazy, he's a demon, he's a specter. And so they start to kind of turn on him in that way, and you just see his eventual downfall and or descent into madness. And I love books that discuss that. I usually don't read historical fiction or war novels at all, and so this one I requested from the publisher at a whim, and they sent me a copy kindly from FSG, and I'm so glad I read it. I want everyone to read this book. I think it's so good if you can handle some gruesome imagery. But yeah, even if you don't think you like war novels, even if you don't think you like historical fiction, I think you should try this one. It's not too big of a commitment. It's like 135 pages, and it's a small little book, and so yeah, definitely check this one out. Seriously, a phenomenal book, and I keep talking about it all the time, so it stuck with me a lot, and that says something. So great one for sure. Okay, diving into some short story collections. The first one I have is Fraternity by Benjamin Nugent, and I was so surprised by this collection because all I knew about it, I requested this one as well from the publisher, FSG again, and basically it's a story collection about frat boys. And I was never in a frat. I don't really care to know about frat boys and what they're doing. Just not something I would want to pick up. But Benjamin Nugent really dissects fraternity culture, and he looks at a lot of different themes here, such as toxic masculinity and consent and rape culture in fraternities. And I just thought it was so well done, and it's also like darkly funny throughout. There's one story that uses magical realism to like a really great effect. It's only one story, but Yeah, it's really great. I think the first two stories in the collection, if I remember correctly, yeah, I think God and Basics, I think those are my two favorites, the first two, but they're all solid. The writing is very precise and cutting, and I loved it so much. It's one of those short story collections. I found this frequently this year, is like I'm enjoying short story collections because of their brevity, obviously, and I really like that format for telling a story. And I didn't really know if I would like short stories. I hadn't read many before, but they really opened up my eyes to how much I enjoy them. And so, and I should say these stories are all based in one fraternity, and so it's looking at different characters within it, different times and everything. And yeah, it's so good. Also very, very short. And Emma Cline, who wrote Daddy, another short story collection I really liked this year. She said, a lovely sequence of stories, moving, dark, and funny. To put it simply, yes, that's very true. Yeah, these do get quite dark, very thought-provoking. I don't know. I always think about this book and when I think about short story collections that surprise me or that I just really like. And I love this cover too. I think his first story in this collection is called God, and he got a lot of attention for that, I think like a year or two ago, or maybe longer. But I think that one's available online if you want to check out his style. I think that's his best story. And so maybe read that one, then grab a copy of this, but very good. Okay, next one, a book I've never talked about on this channel, and that is The Exhibition of Persephone Q by Jessi Jezewska Stevens. This book I read this in March. I had just started getting into Otessa Moschweg, and I often compare books to her when they're books that I like. And this one definitely feels Moschwegian in the sense that we follow this woman named Percy Q, and the narrator, she is, I think, in her early 20s. She's pregnant, and she has a boyfriend who she lives with in New York City, and this is right after 9/11. And so she's dealing with being pregnant and trying to discover herself throughout the whole book, but at the beginning you kind of sense that she's a little bit dislocated feeling, and what she ends up doing is she becomes nocturnal, and she's kind of in this state of change in the sense that she starts to look at her boyfriend differently, and she becomes nocturnal, and she will be sleeping next to her boyfriend, and then she starts holding his nose, and she doesn't end up killing him or anything, but she's having these odd impulses to harm him, and she just feels off, and she starts wandering the New York City streets at night and trying to find herself, or just kind of contemplating everything that's going on, and post 9/11, being pregnant, a lot of big changes in her life. And one day in the mail, she gets this catalog of photos, and in them is a woman lying down on her bed, I think, and she is looking at the photos and she realizes that they're her, and she's a bit confused. And when she goes to the exhibition to look at the photos hanging up, people around her don't see that it's her, and she starts to feel kind of this disassociation. And basically you go from there and kind of determine what is she seeing the right things? Is her perception off? Is it really her? And so this book is deeply rooted in this thought experiment about identity, and rooting itself in post 9/11 and looking at the evolution of internet culture and trying to find your way as a young woman being pregnant and kind of not feeling like yourself. It's very much a reflection on identity. And I thought, the kind of somewhat unlikable oddness of the narrator was very Moschwegian, and I just had a really good time with this one. I would like to reread this now that it's been almost a year since I read it. I thought it was so good and so odd. I remember, I think it's told in 3 parts, and every part is kind of different narratively, and the second part is almost this short story that's just so packed with her history. Percy, you learn more about her, and it's told in a different style. And so this is basically a flex of a debut novel. It definitely has MFA vibes, but in a good way, I would say, showing what she's got with this book. And I think this book asks a lot of questions rather than answering many things, but I like books that do that. I like ambiguity. I like, just being in the head of someone and determining why they are the way they are. And I love books that question identity and everything. So this is bound to work for me. Yeah, definitely check it out if that sounds interesting to you. I haven't seen this one much, and I'm so surprised because I think it's so strong, and I want more people to read it so I can discuss it. And yeah, check it out. Okay, next, a book I've talked about a ton, and I need more people to read it, is Apartment by Teddy Wayne. Love, love, love this book. All these books are very short, so none of them are much of a commitment, but this one follows I believe, unnamed narrator. Yeah. He's in an MFA program. I think it's at Columbia University. And he's basically not a very good writer, or people don't like his writing. And he's struggling in the program to stand out, to write something good. He's trying to, discover himself and find a passion. And so he's in this MFA program. And then one day there's a student named Billy who is poor, and he's an excellent writer. Everyone loves his work in the class when they're workshopping ideas and their manuscripts and everything. Everyone loves Billy's stuff, right? And so Billy and the narrator become friends, and the narrator has like a subsidized apartment, and so he offers Billy to move in with him, and you start to see that the narrator becomes more and more attached to Billy, and he's generally an isolated guy. He's struggling to, find himself and become a better writer. And so his loneliness tied with his desire to be better causes him to latch on to Billy, who is very, nice to him. And it seems like it's the first inkling of like true friendship that the narrator has had. And so you see him grappling between his career and his success with the friendship that he has, and things get a little dicey as you learn more about the narrator's attachment to Billy, and things kind of end up blowing up a bit. And that's where I'll leave it. But I think this book is, one, beautifully written, two, so surprising and original. If you like books about writers, I think this is a great one. It's set in the 90s, and so yeah, I loved it. I was so blown away by it. I think about it all the time. Highly recommend it. And this cover, gorgeous. It even wraps around a little bit. One of my favorites this year, for sure. Okay, next. I just read this book last week, and it is Cool for America, a short story collection by Andrew Martin. And I hadn't seen this book at all. I always check out Brandon Taylor's Twitter account, and he had tweeted recently, he's like, I can't stop thinking about that short story collection by Andrew Martin. And whenever he praises a book, I go look it up and usually buy it. And I saw this one didn't have many reviews, and I saw his first book, Early Work, had a lot of mixed reviews. And so I was a little bit hesitant, but knowing Brandon Taylor, what he likes, I like his work, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it. It sounds good. And to put it quite simply, this book is, I think, a short story collection for people who like reading about young people trying to find their way, two, for people that love books and writing and reading, and three, people that love messed up characters. I think all of these stories they're not too dark, I would say, but they're touching on a lot of, sensitive themes, even for myself as a 25-year-old. And I related to these characters a lot in the sense that they're just trying to figure out, like, what do I really like to do? Like, what do I want to do? Am I going in the right path of wanting to be a writer? I'm not a writer myself. I'm saying I have the similar, thoughts about life at this stage. And these are often very like weird in the sense that they're original stories, not anything like outlandish or surreal, really. Yeah, and this book deals a lot with kind of like outsiders in a sense, or just people feeling kind of like this dislocation. I mean, all these stories are told in, I think, Missoula, Montana. And so it's just so good. It made me think a lot, and I think it's beautifully written. It has the exact kind of prose style that I like that very clear, sharp prose, but also very like willing to be experimental when necessary, and there's so many ideas packed into these stories about identity and coming out of adolescence and dealing with personal problems. Like there's a story in here about siblings that are addicts who relapse around Christmas, so great for it now. Yeah, there's just so much going on here. I can't say anything coherent about it because I find it's hard for me to like review short story collections because I want to like talk about every story, and I try to like sum up my thoughts about the collection as a whole. But I can honestly say this is one of the best short story collections I read this year. If you like unlikable characters who are making their way through life like I do, this is your short story collection for sure. And this cover's cool. I like it. The oddest book of this collection, I would say, and it is What Happens at Night by Peter Cameron. I was completely surprised by this book. It is one of the most like unnerving, unsettling, beautiful and sad and just weird and questioning novels I've read this year. It follows this couple who is going on this trip to a northern European country that is not specified, and you're not really sure what time period this is in, and they're trying to adopt a child because the wife has uterine cancer, and so she can't have children, and so they're going to this country where it's people go to adopt children. And the reason is because this country, even though she has uterine cancer, I guess in other countries you're not allowed to adopt children if you have, I think like an end-of-life illness such as uterine cancer. And so they want to adopt a child to give the husband something to have when she passes. And so sad premise to start. But as they go to this country, as they travel there and they're there and they stay at this big hotel, that is also very odd. Its staff are very quiet. There's not many people there. And so like things are just weird. You're just like, what is going on with these people? Is this set like in a magical world? Like what is happening? But it's not too out there. Well, that's not true. It's very out there. It's not like a fantasy novel. That's what I mean. From there, you follow the couple as things constantly are derailed for them in getting this child. There's characters that they meet at this hotel that kind of hinder their ability to get this child. They run into constant problems, including many like anxious situations in which the wife and the husband are arguing a lot. And so you kind of see where things go from there and whether they're going to get this kid. And by the end of it, I was just like, damn, so surprising, so weird, so thought-provoking. It's a book that just sits in your brain and it's very clearly told. It's not like a out there prose, it's very direct. And so it seems like this is kind of like a fable or an allegory and also kind of like a ghost story in a way. And so if you want a book that will like challenge you and make you think, what is going on here? But while also being a really moving story about parenthood and death and grief and like all of those things combined, I think this is a good book for you. If you like bizarre books, if you're willing to take a chance on a book that might not answer all your questions, yeah, this is just good storytelling. And if you want a good story to buckle in with, this is your book. All right, so those are my 6 most underrated books that I've read in 2020. I really like all those books and I urge some of you to pick some of those up. I do see some people might not enjoy some of these for various reasons, but I think they're worth your time. And they're all fairly short. So if you want to like try some new stuff, I think you should check one of these out. But until next time, cheers. And I always forget about my beer, but I get to enjoy it now that I finished the video.